a little bit about how to get more press for your startup. We've got some great journalists here that have been on the floor for years, doing this. So they've got great experiences. Before we do that, though, let's just run down really quick a little bit of background on like what you do your day-to-day here at CES is, so people understand what you've been up to. So we'll just kind of go down the row.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Tim Stevens. I'm the editor-in-chief of Engadget. Day-to-day, I'm really leading the team. We're lucky to have a team of about 50 people who are working on content for the site. So I don't actually spend a whole lot of time on the floor myself, but we also have a stage here. So I've been doing a lot of live interviews there and a lot of demonstrations there for the readers. So that's all being live streamed. So this year I'm doing more administrative stuff, but then we've got a lot of journalists who are out there digging through pitches and emails and looking on the show floor and making sure that we get every last thing. And we've got about, I think, 5 running around out here right now, as a matter of fact.
And how many years have you been to CES?
This will be my 5th year.
Wow. Okay, great. All right, Kelly.
I'm Kelli Grant. I'm the senior consumer reporter for MarketWatch. I work pretty closely with the Wall Street Journal and do a lot of video for them. Also Smart Money, which is slowly folding into MarketWatch. I cover everything consumer spending for my day-to-day, and obviously consumer electronics are a big part of that. So here at the show, I'm basically walking the floor, writing about the cool things I see as I wander. And this has been my 5th show, and so I've been doing that, the wandering really, for the past 2 years. They've been letting me post about a dozen times or so a day.
Wow, okay.
Hi, I'm Jason Gilbert. I work for the Huffington Post. I cover mostly consumer technology, mostly hardware. And like Kelly, I'm just sort of wandering the show floor and looking for really visually appealing gadgets that catch my eye. And I mean, if you have a good visual hook and something really interesting, that's something I'm trying to post on, and I'm doing about 4 to 5 posts a day. 12 is a lot.
It is.
That's very ambitious. So yeah.
12 posts a day. All right, great. So you just walked around the floor here. You talked to some of the startups. You mentioned you walked around the floor, the other floor, the big convention center. What's kind of caught your eyes, some of the trends or some of the startups that you think are most interesting so far?
Well, for me, I mean, it's great to see a lot of these Kickstarter successes and Indiegogo successes here in the flesh. I mean, we've seen them on those sites, we've seen videos of them, we've seen them on YouTube, and of course on Facebook and lots of other places. So it's good to see a lot of those products here on the show floor for the first time, and I think that's really an encouraging step. I mean, we're seeing larger companies moving away from CES and launching their own, having their own product events. RIM having their BlackBerry 10 launch in a couple of weeks here, things like that. But it seems like there are more than enough small companies and a lot of innovation that's helping to kind of fill those gaps. And so, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff out there. I think that's fantastic.
I would agree. I think a lot of the Kickstarter projects and other crowdfunding sites has been really, really interesting to see. Someone who writes about where consumers tend to shop. Turns out they're really a great source, I think, for people to get in on some of these really interesting products well before you spot it in like a Best Buy. So you really, if you want to be on the cutting edge of things, great source for that. Also very interested in a lot of the health and fitness tech that's coming out, although I almost feel like walking around there's almost too much of it in some areas that I want to see a little more differentiation, something that's really innovative in the area instead of just yet another fitness tracker.
Yeah, I think you're hearing a lot of backlash about CES this year, and I think a lot of the backlash is directed towards these giant booths from these huge companies. And what's most refreshing for me has been to see the smaller companies showing us something we haven't seen before. For me, the most interesting I've seen so far is a fork, like a fork with a computer in it.
It's a happy,
and I think that's
happy?
like
what's it called?
The Happy Fork.
Happy Fork, yeah.
And I think it's gotten a ton of press.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you had told journalists coming in that a fork would be the most covered and sort of the most exciting thing in the show, they would have laughed at you. But that sort of goes back to that, that refreshing, what have we not seen, what's cutting edge, what's going to be next.
So you touched on something that's very unique, and I think that's, it's not another tablet, it's not another iPhone case. I mean, the minute you sign up for CES as a journalist, you get slammed with tons of emails about everything that's happening, and gosh, I think like 90% of them are like iPhone case launches, so it's nice to see something fresh. Okay, so let's talk about that though. So you do get all those emails, you see the floor, there's tons of people asking for your attention to look at their product. How do you get through all that? And you can go down, somebody can jump in.
I think I ignore most of it. Okay. So a lot of it goes straight to the archive in Gmail. I think when CES time starts, you've got like you have the subject of your email to attract me or you're out.
Right.
Like if you don't get me by the subject and maybe like the little preview that shows up in Gmail, you're going straight to the archive.
So email is not the best way to get you.
It's better than calling me. I mean, for sure, I'm not going to answer my phone.
Okay.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, if you have a great subject with something super interesting,
Okay.
I'll
Kelli?
at least read the rest of the
Kelli,
email.
do you do the same thing, or?
Pretty much. I mean, I would say if you want to send me an email about CES, the time to do it is before the show, when
Right.
I'm actually looking through and I come out with a whole list of products that I'm going to be looking for on the show floor.
Right.
But once I get here, my inbox is just flooded. I actually
Right.
have an away message on my inbox right now that says basically if this is CES related, I might look, I might not, but I'm pretty much not checking my email, my work email, until the end of the day.
Right.
My editors have a separate email address that they're emailing me at,
Right.
otherwise I'd lose it.
That's tough, yeah. So Tim, do you do the same thing? You've got a
Yeah.
team of people that are looking at
Yeah,
this stuff.
I mean, I'm lucky to have a team of people who can really help to find, find the diamonds in the rough, as it were. Personally, I have, years worth of filters built up in Gmail that
Yeah.
send a lot of it to separate folders. There's like a low priority, a medium priority, and then the PR reps that I know that I want to work with, that I know if they send me something good that I want to read that'll bubble up to the top of my email and it'll be flagged so that I can see that quickly. That's the kind of thing that, it's always growing and always evolving, and it helps in some cases, but ultimately there's still a lot of noise. So,
Right.
yeah, email is absolutely still the best way. Like I said, calling
not the
doesn't
best.
work because if you're on the show floor out here, you can't hear anything anyway. Texting might work, but even that's a little bit too intrusive. Really, email is
Okay.
best.
So email is still the best way. Are there things on the floor that just grab your attention and just like make you want to like gravitate to that product? Like even walking around here or the other, bigger floor.
Food? No,
Food. There you go.
I'm kidding.
We're hearing it first. It really comes down to the simple.
No, just
primitive
some sort of an
needs.
eye-catching demo. If you've got just a booth with a computer, unless you're showing off the computer, then I'm more interested in seeing the product. How does it work?
Yeah.
We saw a demo of a skateboard earlier. And they've got the skateboard. They're going up and down the aisles with it.
Right.
That's pretty attention-getting compared to, a computer and a couple of flyers you're handing out.
Right. So you just touched on one of the companies here, Z-Board, I believe. Did you guys ride the Z-Board by chance?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
We wrote a prototype last year. They were here last year as
Right,
well,
yeah.
and actually they're coming to our podcast tonight, so I'm going to finally get
There
to
you
ride
go.
it myself this evening. So I'm looking forward to that. I may be in a cast tomorrow, but I'm looking forward to tonight.
Excellent. All right. So talk about how you want to be approached. From a startup perspective, there's a lot of startups here. That's helpful, but they still got to get over that hump. So is there any other advice you'd give a company that's coming to CES to tackle it the right way? I mean, they've got limited amount of resources, limited amount of time. You guys you've got the same issues as far as time and resources. You can't mesh with everyone. So how do you get found?
If you're setting up at CES, you better have like a great booth presentation, because basically what we're doing or what I'm doing is I'm walking down a line and like my head's going back and forth. So there has to be something like probably either on your table or at the top of the booth, a title and a tagline that's going to catch me in a second. Because CES is so massive and I'm only one person. So, I'm going to head to a booth that automatically catches my attention. And this is a chicken and egg situation, but if you have a booth that's really crowded, I naturally want to see what everyone's looking at. Like there's a booth out there, I mean, it was swarmed and I still don't know what it is. And I was trying to nudge my way through, and I'm definitely going to go back there.
And you mentioned PR, like people. Like how do you know as a startup how to find that right person? I mean,
It's very challenging. They can be, obviously a huge benefit for you. They can also be a huge detriment for you. I mean, there's nothing worse than seeing a cool product and going to get a demo and asking some questions and realizing that this person has no idea what they're talking about, or they're consulting a 3-ring binder to try to figure out what they're supposed to say, or they're saying, oh, let me go get so-and-so, and then so-and-so is, off in another booth somewhere. If you do have help, make sure that your help not only knows the product, but knows the technologies behind the product, and knows the company too. I mean, if that person can't give, the kind of passionate pitch that the founder can give, then ultimately they're selling it short. And you're better off having probably fewer people in your booth, but doing it yourself than hiring somebody who's going to do a poor job, frankly.
so literally having the founder there is important.
Not necessarily the founder, but it's got to be somebody who feels passionate about the product and somebody who knows the product very, very well.
Because product leads, head of the product or something.
Right. I mean, we're going to ask at first very high level stuff. What's your product? When was it released? And by the way, if the product was released, if it's in, it's out there already, or if it's been around for a while, then at that point you've lost us. Unfortunately, we don't really have time.
So I was going to ask you, how long? What's the window of a product that after a certain amount of time it just doesn't? It's not relevant as much, or you're not as interested.
A week or two, probably.
Okay.
I mean, if it's a new product if it's on Kickstarter now, and this is the first time we're seeing it, that's fantastic. If it's closed as Kickstarter round, we've already gotten hands-on, probably we're not too interested. Or if it's in production, if it's already available for sale, then no, certainly not for us.
So that's your window. Kelli, do you have a similar window, or are you looking longer term?
I would say I get a little bit of a longer window just because I cover so much beyond consumer technology that, for me, for something that's maybe a month or two old, if our audience hasn't really heard of it, then it's still something that I would look at. But then it becomes something that maybe it gets kicked to the back of my list in things that I'm writing about. I'm taking notes on everything that I'm interested in, but maybe that's part of a roundup instead of getting its own post.
Right. Okay. I'll go right down the row here.
If I could, I just want to say something about PR emails.
Sure.
This is a pet peeve of mine.
Sure.
If a PR, you can push back on this, but if you're a PR person and you're sending me an email, it should look like a letter written to me. Like it should look like an email written to me, and not like a template like with boxes and sort of like graphics. Like
not a newsletter.
I respond, not newslettery.
Right.
I think I respond much more frequently to, I mean, obviously it's written by a robot, it's a program, but like if it looks like Dear Jason, paragraph, sign off, I respond much more.
So you respond to that better.
I would also say, I think startups, if you're looking for a PR agency, important to see what some of those pitches look like, because I get some that are, it's one product, they can really showcase it, but I've gotten a lot for CES where it's like, come see all of our clients, and then I have to read through the whole list, and there's not a really great description of a lot of these products, so that's not going to catch my attention as much as, here is this one really amazing thing that you have to stop by and see.
So the consolidation of the press release into like, here's all of our clients, come check them out, just doesn't work.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a list of like 20 products, and half of them are iPhone cases, and you lose me after like the first 3, and I just figure there's probably not much interest.
And even worse is if it's a few sentences, very high level about the company, and then come meet with the CEO and he'll describe the products. No, I mean, I don't have time to make appointments. I'm not going to come to your booth just to see if this is interesting to me. It's got to be very quick. The information's got to be there. I need to see a picture of the product. I need a demonstration of the product, and a video would be fantastic. But I've got to have all that information available to me. And of course, your booth location. I see a lot of companies that don't include that. And if it's something that's maybe mildly interesting, but I have to now go and look up where you're located, that's a problem.
Okay. What about pitches via social media? Some people try to contact you probably via your Twitter handles or whatever. Do you ignore that? Do you look at it? What's your take on that?
I tend to ignore that. Okay. I mean, I try to keep that to be more of a interaction with my readers more so. I mean, certainly I do get pitches, I do get reminders there, and every now and again it's something that I'll follow up on. But I don't like to be contacted that way myself.
Okay. Kelli?
I'll usually at least take a look at it if it's something that comes in, but that doesn't mean I'm going to respond via social media. If you really want me to respond, then email me. It's probably the best way to do it, but I'll at least take a look.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I look at it because I get far fewer tweets at me than I do email pitches, but it doesn't increase the likelihood I'll cover it.
Okay. So going back to like just CES in general, what's the biggest thing or most interesting thing that you've seen so far, just down the road? What's the most interesting story that you've covered besides the fork?
Well, I mean, as I alluded to earlier, I think the biggest story of CES is the way that CES is changing and shifting away from these mega companies with these mega booths and shifting down toward more things like this with smaller companies but greater innovation, which I think is fascinating to me anyway. So we're seeing a lot of that, but of course, the big story of the show is 4K TVs and Ultra HD and OLED and all that good stuff. So that's probably the big overall technology theme of the show. But the big culture theme of the show is happening right here.
Right. Excellent. Yep.
So I can't say the fork, which is definitely up there on my list. I would say some of the mobile search sites are kind of interesting to me. Grokr was one that we looked at earlier this week, and they try to anticipate and learn about you to better push your notifications. Kind of interesting, raises a lot of privacy questions though too in that space.
Yeah, I'd say the two big stories for me are definitely, I think this is like a year of television. at CES much more than it has been in years past, and also the democratization of CES in terms of the smaller companies catching a lot more journalist attention.
Excellent. All right, I think we're going to open it up to the audience for questions. All right, so who wants to be the first contestant here? All right, in the front here. Mitch, we got a mic for you here.
What's your very best pitch you've ever heard?
There you go.
So, am I on? The best pitch I've gotten, I didn't write about it, but it was so wonderful. There's this app from Australia that all it does is you take a picture of yourself and it shows what you would look like as a pregnant person. And instead of emailing me or calling me, they sent me a diaper with the pitch written on the diaper and a picture of myself pregnant. And it was the PR person telling me, like, you don't remember this, but we shared a night, and now it looks like you're, yeah. But it was such a bizarre, weird, like, if you send me something really weird, I'm certainly going to remember it. And I still have that diaper a year later, like, it's on my desk. I thought it was really inventive and really wonderful.
I was at a press event a couple of years ago. I don't even remember which one or which company this was, but they were showcasing indestructible cases, and they threw a phone like right past me into a wall, which certainly got me to stop and at least say, what the heck is going on here? I don't know that I ended up writing about them either, just because we don't cover much in the way of cases for anything, but it was certainly interesting.
I have two. The best successful pitch was from GoPro, and it was basically, you know, I'd worked with GoPro, I did reviews of their helmet cameras, and it was a short email that said, hey Tim, we're working with scientists and launching these balloons up into the atmosphere in Alaska, do you want to come check it out? That was it. And so like, yeah, obviously. The best unsuccessful pitch, I think, is from a company, I think it's called PaperMe, that basically you can create an avatar of yourself and print it and fold it up and turn it into, you know, a little you, basically. And they made one of me, and they started posting on Twitter the things that they were going to do to it if I didn't reply to them and write about it. So they were like, they were threatening to throw it away and put it in the shredder. And it was funny, and I went back and forth with them. Ultimately, it wasn't something we could cover, but it was a nice pitch anyway.
It wasn't relevant. So you're looking at very unique pitches that get your attention, not the ordinary press releases that are emailed to you. Okay, great question. Who's got another question in the audience? One back here?
So Kelli, you mentioned you were sick of all the fitness trackers. What are you looking for, though?
In the fitness tracker, let's see. Just in anything health related. Well, I'm still looking for someone who can explain to me why anyone who's not climbing Mount Everest this year needs a blood oximeter, or that's something that I'm looking for right now. Really just anything that is useful for, I think, like an everyday health tracking is pretty interesting. My editors like the Scanadu, which is one of those that you put to your temple for 10 seconds and it spits out a range of health data that you could then bring to your doctor. So I think those things are pretty interesting for us right now.
I did see one here. Did you get to see InstaBeat by chance? It's for swimming. I don't know if you're a swimmer, but
didn't see that one yet. We just looked at Gecko Cap before we came up to the stage, and I thought that one is an interesting application that it uses for the inhaler caps, and that's something that's definitely offbeat compared with some of the other health trackers I've seen on the floor.
Cool. All right, great question. Got a question back here?
Hello, and thank you for doing this today. You were saying earlier for the creator or the owner of a company or anything to be present at the booth all the time. For a new startup at CES, there's so many events like this, and myself at booth 75502. What do you recommend? How do you narrow down what type of media events should we go to as new startups? Because there's so many to choose from, and some of them are all over the place.
Good question.
Sometimes, you know, you don't ever even necessarily need to go to these events. I mean, CES is great. You've got all these journalists here, and it's a great way to get attention. But if you're doing something outside of an event like this, frankly, I mean, just send some emails out to journalists who you think might be interested in saying, hey, I'm coming to New York or San Francisco on this day, and I'll come to your office and show you my thing. And it's as simple as that. If you're flexible on the date and the time, you'll probably get some success. And if you hit New York or San Francisco, you'll cover 90% of the tech journalists in the US anyway. And that's a pretty good way to do it on your own without really needing to set up a booth or to set up anything. If you have a small product, of course. If you're talking about a massive 3D printer or a car or a monster truck, that might be a little bit more complicated. But outside of events like this, I think you don't really need to be anything locked down. You can be a little more flexible, and that works for us.
Interesting. So you focus more on relationships than press events.
Right. I mean, that assumes that you have a product that we want to see, of course.
Right.
But ultimately, if the product isn't something that we want to see, then you know, whether you have a great booth or you have no booth, or it doesn't matter where you are, then the chances are we're not going to cover it anyway. So you know, I'd say go direct if you can.
I would say here at CES too, some of the bigger consumer tech events like digital experience, showstoppers, that's at least for me, like if I'm on the show floor all day, I'm doing the run down the aisle, and if it doesn't catch my attention in a few seconds, then you've lost me. But at those events where I've got a couple of hours, there's food, there's wine, you know, people are wandering a little bit more, I feel like, there, so it's a little bit easier to have that you know, leisurely conversation with somebody and maybe not be on such a tight deadline. My editors stop really running a lot of my stuff after 6 o'clock Eastern, so for me, that's really when I get a lot of my reporting done, and I have a little more freedom to sit and talk with somebody.
And you're also not competing with the show floor at those events too. I mean, right now, the convention is going on right now, so a lot of journalists are going to be focused over at the convention center. But the evening events, you know, that's not a concern.
Great question. Back here in the back.
Yeah, so you mentioned that 2, 3, 4 weeks after the product is launched or whatnot, you're really not interested in the story anymore. Is there a certain time in the innovation stage that you like to hear about something? Is there sort of a too early to talk about it or anything like that?
As soon as you have a functional prototype, we want to see it. You know, as long as you can show to us that you know what it takes to get that product to market, that you're not going to screw over our readers, basically. If you have something functional and something you know, that works, or it doesn't have to look finished. You know, it can be a bunch of wires in a box. That's fine, as long as it does what you're intending to do, and as long as we are confident that you know how to get that thing to market, then we're interested. For sure.
Have a functional prototype and then bring it to you.
Yeah,
I agree with that. If you're building something, you have to have one.
Right.
If you have an idea for something, it doesn't count for much.
If you send me a 3D render of a product, that's probably not going to get my interest unless it's something, you know, completely mind-blowing and you know it's going to come out, you know, in a month or two. It's got to be something that actually is physical and actually works.
Also, my guess is you'll get more bang for your buck if you're from the media, if you have a checkout page, if you're ready to sell it, because a lot of sites won't, like, if you have a prototype and we write about it, a lot of sites won't come back to it just to announce that it's now on sale. So I think that's sort of...
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's a really good point.
I don't know if that's true, but I don't know if it's true that you'll get more bang for your buck, but I think, you know, some of I'd say if you have a checkout page, a pre-order page, a price, a ship date, that's a good time to come to the media.
Price is really important from my perspective, because a lot of what I'm writing about is this a good value for consumers? And we can talk about a lot of the factors of a product that might make it better or worse than the competition, but price really is a big thing if we're going to recommend something that's very, very cool, but we can't tell you how much it is. That's a lot harder of a sell for me and for my editors.
This is a high-level thing, but I sort of think Microsoft sunk itself on the surface when they didn't have a price or a release date.
Yeah.
Like, I think if they had a price and a release date and a pre-order page when they had announced that thing, they would have sold so many more. And instead, they waited 2 months, and you know, people had time to doubt it and think about it and talk about the flaws. And you know, that's a big company, obviously, but it's sort of what happens.
And so, stepping back to the, you know, how to get our attention thing, which kind of ties into this, and also the question of when to contact us. If you can put the word exclusive in the subject line of the email and send it only to me and say, hey, this is an exclusive opportunity. If you guys want to run this, you'll be the first one to go. That'll get my attention, even if it's a product that I might not have been interested in before. If it's something that I'm going to be the first one to get online and I'm the only one who knows that I've got the video and nobody else has it, that's a really great way to get my attention for a product that I might have not been that interested in otherwise. If it's exclusive, it bumps up the priority list a little bit. And you know, that's a risky game. If you get ignored there, then it's going to take you more time to go somewhere else and try to get an exclusive. But it'd be better to be picked up as an exclusive on one site than to be, you know, kind of ignored by quite a few others, I would say.
Great advice. All right, we got another question over here.
And thanks so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
So my name's Matt Thompson. I'm the co-founder of Troop ID, which is the first identity management company for the military community that helps brands reach them online in a trusted and verified way. This is our first year at CES. We're here because we won Reboot America, and I haven't had a chance to really walk around to see the other booths because I've been at ours. But you know, I'm curious what things have caught your attention from businesses that don't have a physical product, because you know, we're a SaaS business model that integrates with partner brands, so I don't have like a physical, like I can't hit a iPhone case or you know, something like that. So what things have caught your attention for businesses like ours that we could do, you know, either this year or in future years to catch your attention?
Well, that's not exactly an area that we typically cover, so to be honest, if there's no product, then I'll just keep on walking. So for Engadget, it's not really an area that we cover, unfortunately.
I think for me then it's more about that advanced pitch, because I have looked at a lot of different services while I've been on site here, and it's more about sort of knowing in advance that, you know, I'm looking for that specific booth, that it's probably not one that's going to catch my attention, except that I'm looking for your name. Mm-hmm.
All right, great question. Who's got the mic? We got one over here and over here.
Hi, good afternoon. How often do you either receive emails or look at emails from, say, maybe a small local media network about a new company that's launching in a small area, and do you pay any attention to those sort of things?
Can you give an example?
Yeah.
Small product launch that comes from maybe a university research group, and it's covered from, you know, a local newspaper in a smaller city, you know, not a 200 level market or anything like that. Do you get things like that? Do you pay attention to any of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, it's not about the source of the product, it's the product itself. So we do a lot of work with universities and research labs. That, you know, kids who are doing amazing stuff for their senior thesis and stuff like that. I mean, that stuff blows us away, and our readers totally geek out about that because they think, well, I could be doing that too. So we love to see that stuff. So you know, the source of the product, either geographically or you know, the news source, isn't really that interesting to us. It's about the product and about the story behind the product.
I would say too, it's about the availability. If it's just, I get a lot from daily deal sites, and they say like, well, we've launched only in this city. And it's like, well, that's great for that city, but unless they have pretty rapid expansion plans or they're doing something that's really unique, because I have a national audience, I'm not necessarily going to be as interested in writing a column about something that's available in one place, but not everywhere else.
Yeah, I agree with that. Certainly if it's only launching in one city, it's not that interesting. But one thing I'd say about the way I look at things is the less that other journalists know about a product, the juicier it is for me. Like most writers like to sort of break something nationally or sort of be on the ground floor for launches. So, I mean, that would be appealing.
Okay, question over here.
You answered my question about exclusives, but my other question was about embargoes. So when you have something that you know, hasn't been released to the market yet, reaching out early with an embargoed release or pitch, how do you usually work with companies in that capacity?
You'll get a lot of different answers to this one. We love embargoes. I'm of the opinion that an embargo that is kept helps both us and whoever's launching the product, because we can do a much better, more thorough job of covering your product than we would otherwise. Because you know, for Engadget, we're very focused on being first and getting the news up quickly. You know, we do our best to be very comprehensive as much as we can, but we might get the post up without a video or something like that, so that might have to come later. Those are the sorts of things that we can take care of in advance if we have an embargo. So absolutely, embargoes are good for us, but they have to be enforced, and we need to see that if somebody else breaks an embargo, that you are going to ignore them next time. That's very important for us. If we see you giving us an embargo and we hold the embargo and somebody else doesn't, and the next time an embargo comes around, we might frankly just ignore your products. So that's very, very important to us.
I'm usually pretty happy to hold to an embargo, although sometimes the back and forth with PR people negotiating, because they don't want to tell me what the information is before I've agreed to the embargo, but I can't promise that my editors are interested until I know what it is. That can get a little wearing, but usually, yeah, that's absolutely something that we're interested in.
Yeah, I mean, I like embargoes too because it sort of helps me set my schedule in advance. Like when you have a publishing date, you can sort of set aside time you know when your article has to be done by. You've set a deadline for us. We have a lot of time to do background research on the product. Yeah, it's fine.
All right, one more question. Who's got the last question here? Right here? Okay.
Before we came down here, I read the article in the New York Times about the browser wars flaring up again, and expected a lot of that when we got here, but so far I've not seen anything about it. So what have you guys noticed? Because we are releasing a browser, very personal browser, new experience for the internet, but I haven't seen any other competition. So what have you guys noticed?
Well, we're actually surprised to see the mobile OS wars kind of flaring up a little bit more. We've got Ubuntu and Mozilla's mobile OS, so that is a new war that's coming up. But in terms of the browser war, I mean, if anything, we see people moving away from browsers to dedicated apps for a lot of mobile stuff. But no, I don't really think that we've seen that much in the way of new browsers or browser competition. There are the big players that are still pretty solid. And for us as a website, it's very challenging for us to support a lot of new entries in that market too, to test across all these platforms. But at CES specifically, no, I haven't really heard that much about new browsers myself.
I haven't seen anything about it yet.
I'd say browsers are sort of so entrenched at this point. There are so many competitors. Like, if you're pitching a new browser, it better have a great pitch. Like, it better have a great, 15-second pitch. Okay.
All right, great. Thank you guys so much for your time. Really appreciate it.